Those that will be watching the video, we have a nice background noise. There'll be a few amens from our son and the toys there. So we got a good background music, so don't be bothered by that.
And if you see me disappear from the camera, that's where we're going.
Yeah, you see us take turns, it happens. All right.
Oh, I'm doing the summary or the review. All right, so as we always do at the beginning of class, our review of what we've been talking about, right? So we have been on the Father's heart. We've been talking about how we show how God shows His love to us, and then how we show our love to God. And so most recently we have been talking about judgment. And so we had been talking about how judgment can keep us from loving others. And how if we end up judging people, then we don't end up loving people the way that we should. Because somehow we end up classifying them in a particular category that they may not necessarily need to be in. And so that ends up taking away from the love that we should be showing them. God wants us to not put people in a box. You know, the more that if we've been on this topic, I've been so consciously aware of judgment, and I realize how subtle it can be and how easy it can just creep into your everyday life. And it's literally been trying constantly to just stop that whole thing of judgment, because it really has been, I mean, I wish I could explain, but it's almost like every few moments almost, it's like, wait, are you judging? Are you judging? Right. You know? Right. Because it really is keeping it high on the radar, which is good, because then the more you become aware of it, then that means you can start dealing with it.
Well, I think it's always basically been a way of life. We didn't know to even think about it.
And we just did it because it was normal, right?
Right, exactly.
And it's so sad because we realize how easy it is to just stop loving people as a result of that, because now we've judged them to be a certain way. And then if we ever have an opportunity to encounter them, we found out it's a completely different story. Or we end up judging somebody based on somebody else's experience. Ali and I, we were talking about that earlier today, that it's just literally someone had told us something about a person, and we realized we had actually taken on that same understanding. And then so we started talking about them based on how those people had judged them. And then I said, you know what? I think we're in judgment of this person, you know? And I said, so we actually need to release him from that judgment. Maybe he's not that way anymore. Maybe there was evidence for that person to be that way previously. But, I mean, what happens if they change, right? We've all had some change. What if people judged us based on BC, right? Before Christ.
That's right.
You know, or shoot, last week. I mean, so it's those kinds of things that if we put people in that kind of box, we end up ostracizing them and end up not loving them the way that we should.
That's right.
So that is one of the things, we've been talking about that for many weeks. But we realized last week as we started talking that one of the things that we hadn't started talking about was self-judgment, right? Judging yourself, right? Just as easy as it is to judge other people, it's just as easy to judge yourself.
And I want to say that on that point, that most of the time we end up judging ourselves because of our experiences as well. We have been judged.
Yes.
And some of us don't even know better. We don't know better. Because if you grow up in a family where you have been told how ridiculous you are, you have been reminded consistently of the mistakes that you've made, you have been reminded consistently of the choices and all those things, you grow immune. It becomes part of you.
Yes, it does.
And at the end of the day, you start then, because of this information that is said to you all the time, you end up stomaching all that in you, and it becomes part of you. So then when you, even sometimes I call it sometimes it's a self-sabotage. That sometimes even when God presents opportunities to us and things to us that He really wants to give us, sometimes we can self-sabotage ourselves because...
And we blame it on the devil.
And we blame it on the devil. Because all we've had in our lives that we are not achievers, we can never attain anything in life. So when an opportunity comes and God presents you with an opportunity, you end up self-sabotaging yourself, talking yourself out of that thing because of your experiences and because you feel you don't deserve them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
And sometimes, just to go a little bit back to the point that she made, sometimes we end up also judging other people because, again, of our experiences.
Yes.
But also we judge other people because we have judged ourselves. So to me, it's normal. So when I say somebody's a jack, it's because I've been telling myself all the time that I'm a jack. So when I say to somebody else,
That's good.
it has no effect because I've already told it to myself.
That's right.
Think of a scripture, and I know we're going to go a little bit deep into this topic. Think of a scripture where Jesus talks about love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Do you know that the opposite of that is that if you have judged yourself, if you're being mean to yourself, that's how you're going to treat your neighbor.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And most of the time, we don't think of it that way. We think it talks about when it comes to love. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. But if you hate yourself, guess what? You're going to hate your neighbor.
Yeah.
If you're impatient with yourself, guess what? That's why you're being impatient with everybody else around you.
That's true.
We do it bad with our children.
Mm-hmm.
It's because it's what we learn, so we do it to our children.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And if and those that were here, a couple of weeks ago, we spoke about it that the judgment cycle is not as big. It's not like as we think. It's not like I've seen somebody at Walmart, we judge them. Yeah, we judge them like that, but we're not going to get to see them again. But it's very close. It's those that are close to us.
Mm-hmm.
Because you've grown familiar with them. I know, man, that's Angela. Angela always talks this way. Angela, when she has a bad day, she does that and all that. And I've judged it. And judgment kind of runs in this small circle, which is the family. Friends, people that we're close to.
Yeah, the ones you see often.
But ultimately, the thing that you should never forget is here's the thing. We judge because we have judged us. And how do you resolve this?
Stop judging.
Mm-hmm.
Stop judging yourself.
Stop judging yourself. And how do you do that? You go deep into the wounded areas of the experiences that you've had and allow the Lord to heal those areas.
Mm-hmm. You're giving them all the good stuff.
I'm giving you all the good stuff and you still get it. I like this illustration. And y'all, like they say, y'all are drawing it out of me. Because you look at me, it's like, oh, you're just drawing it out. So, but let me allow the teacher part of us to kind of give it structure. Before I give you all
before
this.
we get to that part.
I can hear.
I know he was getting ready to give you the steps.
I can hear and think, oh my goodness, you just giving them. Stop.
Then we're going to have to back up.
Yeah, we'll back up. But I think some of these things, the reason why I'm saying them the way I'm saying them is because it will take a while for us to digest them. It will take a while for us to really digest it and come to a place where we really, that becomes part of us. So it's kind of have to be repeated until we get it. Because the bad information that we have, the bad experiences that we've had, they've been repeated all the time. It's like this music that is playing in our minds all the time. So now we need to play new music to your ears and put it on repeat. It's like that CD that has got a scratch until you get it.
Mm-hmm. All right, so now here's what I want you to do, okay? I thought I was going to get you some little pieces of papers, but I want you to just get it in your mind, okay? So, I remember, okay, well, I won't say that part. This is the question that I want to ask.
Don't take us. Don't go deeper like
I know,
did.
right? Okay, so if you can think of one word about yourself, not what somebody else has said, a word about yourself, about who you feel you are, or how you have looked at yourself. I want you to think of that one word. Now, granted, there may be many words, but I want you to think of at least one word about yourself that you can think of right now. Okay? Get that one word in your mind. Okay.
And be honest.
Yeah.
Because it's not always positive or it's not always negative.
Do you want it to be good or bad?
It could be either one.
Okay.
Whatever comes to mind.
Yeah, whatever comes to mind. Maybe we can think of it like, remember that first thoughts, for some of you who were here for that night when we did first thoughts on the paper, and we had to kind of get an idea of how we judge other people,
Yes.
I want you to even think about that for yourself. So maybe think of it like this. What was the first word that came to your mind? Because I'm sure you sift through the cards, right? Okay, no, I don't know if I like that word. No, I don't know if I like that word. So I want you to think, what was the first word, okay, that came to mind about yourself? Okay, you got that word? Everybody's got that
I
word?
got it.
Okay,
Be honest.
all right.
I am.
Okay, now before you share your word, I want you to think about this question. Who helped you think of yourself according to that word?
She's got good questions, this one.
Okay, I'll ask that again. Who helped you think of yourself according to that word?
Or you can
Okay.
say, what experience?
Or what experience helped you to think of yourself according to that word? Okay, so let's just say, for an example, my first word was pretty. Okay, so if my first word is pretty, where did I get that word from? Did I start telling myself that? Did someone else start telling me that? Like, for example, I'll just say pretty. My mom used to always say, well, really, she used to say beautiful, because she said, I don't have ugly kids, you know, so, so it was like that, you know. So, okay, so then if it's beautiful, then I would say that word for me came from my mom. Okay, all right. So you got your word. Now, where did that word come from? Okay, you got that part as well. Okay, all right. Now, like I said, it could be a person or it could be an experience. Now, think about that word, thinking about how you came to that word. Do you believe that word is true about you? Okay? So, for example, beautiful, my mother, do I believe that word is true? Now, think about that, right? Because I could actually be in myself struggling with the fact that I don't know if I'm beautiful or not. Do you hear what I'm saying? That though my mother, that word came from my mother, and though it should be true, but I actually might not believe that it's true. Okay? So sometimes there are judgments that are good, but then other times there are judgments that you can end up being in prison.
That's
too.
right. Yeah.
Okay? All right. So now, do you believe that that word is true about you? Okay? Now the last question is, have you lived your life, or somehow has this word impacted the way that you lived your life? Okay? So now, my example, beautiful. My mother gave me that word. I'll say, yes, I believe it's true. Have I always lived like it is true? Right? And I'd have to answer no. Right?
Right. Gotcha.
Because there are times when I don't think I'm beautiful. Okay? There are times when I don't think everything is wonderful, you know. Right? So that is kind of how that goes. Now, I'm going to use a negative term just so you can see how that goes, right? So let's say bossy. Okay? Let's say bossy is the word that I thought about myself. That and then I'll say for my cousins. When I was younger, my cousins used to call me bossy. I was one of the older cousins in that group, so I used to tell them everything to do, so they called me bossy. Okay? So now, do I believe that it's true? Well, you know. In some ways, it depends who you ask, right? You ask my husband, it might be a different story, right? But for the sake, we'll just say, you know, sometimes yes, sometimes no. But have I lived my life believing that about me? Right? And I can say that I don't think I've lived my life as being bossy. Okay? I don't consciously think of myself as that and like I own it, right? You know, like nowadays, you know, they got all these t-shirts, boss babe, and you know, and all the, you know, that was boss. Now they're changing the definition, I guess. But there's those words though that we end up living by, whether we think they're good or not good, but we end up living by because everybody has either said it, or family members have said it, or even we've said it to ourselves that we've actually taken ownership to it. Just like the B word, right? There are people who are actually owning the B word and like, yeah, I'm a B.
They
Yeah.
brag
deal
about
with
it.
it.
They
Yeah.
brag about it.
Yeah, like, you know, you need to just get yourself, because that's what I am, and deal with it. But now, is that something you should live by? Is that something that should be true? And so we end up making those kind of judgments on ourselves, and then now what do we do with that? Right? We end up carrying ourselves in a certain way that God never intended.
Exactly.
Okay? Now, I gave you those examples, negative and positive. Now, who would like to share their word? Yes, ma'am, Miss Christine.
Giving.
Giving.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And I have to tell you who said
Right. Who? Where did you get that word from? Like who? Like, did you kind of think of that of yourself, or did someone say, "Oh, Miss Christine, you're always giving"?
I think the first person told me that was Pastor Beanie.
Oh, there you go.
And,
Okay. So that's good.
and now I have to say,
Have you lived? Do you believe it's true?
yeah, I love to give.
Okay.
Yeah.
And have you lived according to that truth?
Sort of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like giving because I like seeing people happy.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. All right. So that's a good one. All right.
Now I have to say something negative about me.
No. You can only do one. You don't have to do the negative if you don't want to.
The question is, what came first?
What
What thought came first?
Did you get giving first? Was that your first word that you thought about yourself?
No.
You thought of something else?
Yeah.
Was it negative, the first word you thought?
It was honest.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, there you go.
We wanted that honest one.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Most of the time, you know, sometimes when we're in a setting where we talk and all that, most of the time we might say, you know, I want to say something that can keep, you know, people think that I'm all together and all that. But the issue is, you are going home with yourself, being with yourself, the governing, if I can use that way, the governing thought is that thing that you kept from yourself that keeps governing your life and controlling your life and all that. That is why it's very important to be true to self.
Yeah.
Okay. Be politically correct.
No. What I was going to say is a lot of times, which is what we talked about in this class, is that a lot of times it's difficult to be honest because we have been judged.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
So now, if I say, well, I thought of myself as bossy, and then now if I do something that seems bossy, I'm like, yep, see, she said she was bossy. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Which is what is a killer to being vulnerable in church. If we can't be vulnerable anyplace else, guys, this should be so-called the hospital where we can come and not be well and leave well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't come here to get sicker. I mean, you don't go to the hospital to go, you know, and get sicker. You go in with a cold, you come out with pneumonia. I mean, it doesn't work that way, or it shouldn't. But unfortunately, because of judgment, what we do is we choose not to be vulnerable, not to let people know our stuff, because we feel people are going to use it against us. We feel that at some point you're going to remember what I said and somehow tell other people, go home and gossip about me. And so guess what? I don't tell you that. I just tell you, no, the only thing that I thought was beautiful.
And I really want us to stay there, right there, what she mentioned, because that's very important. You get what I'm talking about. And for us to get into the gist of what you're talking about, you know, we started talking about judgment, and it took us how many weeks?
A lot of weeks.
And I think this might take us 2-3 more weeks to cover this.
Yeah.
Because I need us to stay there, because most of us, the reason we are not honest about the stuff that we think of ourselves and the judgments that we have towards ourselves is because we have been honest at times, and the response that we got from the people that we trusted with our emotions and trusted with our whole being, the response was not what we expected. And you come now, even these days, to a church and say people must be honest. As pastors, you make an altar call, right? You make a call for people to come pray for something, and you can sense in the group that there are people that need to be here.
And they want to come.
And they want to come.
And battling in their minds and their spirits to come.
But you know that there's something that is holding them down, holding them back. It's because in the past they spoke about somebody that is struggling with, lust, or struggling with greed, or struggling with lying. And this person really needed help from God. And they came up and said, I'm struggling with lying. But after they did that, believers in the church went to Cracker Barrel and had lunch. And during lunch, their starter was, ooh, did you see Cheryl today? I did not know that she was a liar. Don't you do that? Yeah, I told you there'll be amens in the background. you get what I'm saying? Oh, I did not know that. Ooh, D, does this better with that? And what happens?
Or they come up every Sunday. I'm tired of seeing them go up.
Yeah.
You see, they always need prayer.
Oh, yeah.
No matter what the pastor call up, they always go up.
And guess what? Then we end up sitting down and battling and sitting in our death bed, if you can call it that way. Something that is eating us on the inside, that is sucking every element of life out of us, because I've tried in the past and I was judged.
That's what happened with my other church. When I was going to my last
Amen,
church.
brother.
When I was going to my last church,
Yeah.
people would criticize me because the Spirit would follow me and I'd speak in tongues and worship. But they wouldn't, they'd sit. And I just felt the Holy Spirit all over me and I couldn't contain myself. But then I heard a couple people say, well, that can't happen every Sunday. So I was being judged.
And on something, I mean, that's on an issue that the Bible, Paul said there is nobody that prays in tongues more than I do. On an issue that should be understandable in the church.
Yeah.
And that should be actually not even, tolerate is a bad word, because we cannot say we're tolerating the gifts, because the gifts should be allowed openly in the church. So think if you are battling with something that socially is something that is bad. You won't stand up. Right? So these are the issues that we're dealing with. When you talk about self-judgment, unfortunately we have to go through that layer of saying, what are the things that they keep actually holding us back from getting over this thing. Again, we've tried in the past. I went to even to family members to trust. Most of the friendships, they've broken up. Why? Because I told somebody something that was dear to my heart and close to my heart, and I trusted them with this information, and they went, guess what? And tell them.
Right?
So now
they did the human Facebook.
Yeah. So now human Facebook. So that our culture is not encouraging for us to be open. Society. Now you come to the church where there's supposed to be a place of, protection and a place of cover. Now I'm in church, in the presence of the Holy Ghost, in the presence of God, Jesus, and I cannot be honest. Huh? Think of it. So we're sitting with a big issue in our hand. Right? And even now, that's why now we ask the question. Even here, we ask the question. I say, tell us what word comes to your mind first. And guess what? Most of us will not tell you the first word that comes to our mind, because I'm looking around and thinking, I think I'm a jerk, but I'm not going to say it in the setting.
Or emotional.
But I think I'm emotional. I think I'm this way, I'm that way. And this should have been the setting where he said, oh, you feel that way. Let's hear what the Holy Spirit is saying. And provide that place and hear what the Holy Spirit is saying about you.
Now, who else would like to share? You don't have to be super honest if you don't want to. Go for it.
First word that comes to my mind is low self-esteem.
Okay.
A lot of people don't see that in me,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't show that part of me
Okay.
a lot of times. I got it from my aunts, my mama's sisters.
Okay.
I felt like they were always beautiful.
Mm.
And they would always pick on my daddy's side of the family and tell me I look like them.
Got it.
And so, and have I always lived? I try to hide it. I try to hide. I
Do you
put on the
believe
makeup.
it's true?
Sometimes.
Okay.
I put on the makeup and try to put on beautiful things to hide the hurt that I've always endured because I was picked on in school too and didn't have a lot of friends. So.
Yeah. And see, you know, that's a very good one because I also dealt with low self-esteem. And it was one of those things that, because I was also picked on as a kid in school, and so they had all kind of nicknames and whatever names and stuff like that. And so, and I would end up comparing myself to another cousin that people at school thought was beautiful, and then I wasn't in that category. And so a lot of those things, the thing is that when those judgments start becoming the way you live your life and how you see yourself, that's where the problem comes, right?
Yeah.
Because if we end up living according to all the judgments that we have, especially the negative ones, we would never accomplish anything.
That's right. You're right.
And then we'll wonder why the church is immobilized. We wonder why people aren't moving in the gifts. We wonder why we don't see miracles. We wonder why we don't see the healings that we should see. And people are bound in judgment of themselves.
Yeah.
Think about the one, and I hear this all the time. Oh, I'm too old for that.
Even young people say that.
Mm-hmm.
Even
Oh.
young people.
I'm too old for that.
Exactly.
So who says you're too old for what? I mean, back in the Old Testament, folks, they were living pretty old.
They sure were.
You know what I'm saying?
Did, yeah, they did.
And so this whole thing of, you know, I'm too old and I'm too old and I'm too old, who says? You know, just as much as it could be not too young. Who says you too young to do what? I mean, nowadays, I mean, there's young entrepreneurs. They have
Yes,
businesses.
yes.
I mean, some young people are going to college and all these things that are defying the natural order of things or the natural timeline that the society has created. But who says that that's how it has to be for you
Exactly.
or for your child or for your grandchild?
Amen.
And so then, no, we must slow them down so that they can fit into the box with everybody else. But God has something else for them. But we said, no, they must, you know, operate this way. Right? Because we think certain things. The thing at the end of the day, unless God has spoken to you specifically to not do something, then you keep flowing with it until God tells you to stop.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
But again, self-judgment, right? Anybody else want to share? I don't want to take that from you. Yes, ma'am.
Listener.
Okay. All right.
I've had people tell me that in my life quite a bit.
Okay.
Classmates and other people. You
Okay.
know, so.
So then, do you believe that's true about yourself?
I do.
Okay.
Most of the time.
Okay.
Yes.
And then you live like it's true.
Yes, I do. Actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good.
Mhm.
That's good. Now, let's say, like I said, sometimes there's good judgments and then sometimes there are not so good judgments, right?
Right.
Now, think about the questions that I ask in general, right? So these judgments, once I get the judgment or the idea or the thing in my mind, where did that judgment come from? Okay? Do I believe it's true? Okay? And do I live like it's true? Okay? Now, when I start thinking about those different questions, and I start thinking about the different judgments, because I know that you got more than one word about yourself, right? And if you start thinking about all those different ones, you find out that it's a jumbled hodgepodge soup,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Of stuff that really is negative and positive. And then that's where we find ourselves living according to some truths that are actually not true.
That is true.
Some things that don't even line up with the Word of God about us,
Right.
right? And here's the challenge, or a lot of times the sad part of this, is when we start living according to those kinds of judgments, we end up not walking in the fullness of who God is in our lives. We end up not walking in the breakthrough. We end up not walking in healing. I'm not even talking about doing anything else for anybody else. I'm talking about your own sanity and peace. Right? Because at the end of the day, it's you, your mind and your thoughts. Those are you, between you and God.
That's right.
Nobody knows the war that is happening in your mind unless you express it.
Mhm.
So you're having all of this war in your mind with the judgments that you have made on yourself, whether or not it's true or not true, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is that a lot of times people can end up saying things to us for so long, and then we feel that we actually are exhibiting those things. And so then to the point where we actually end up believing that those things are true.
Right.
And then we find out, according to the word though, it's not true. And maybe now it's been established on a characteristic that God actually wants to use for his glory, or that God needs to purify or to adjust in your life, that God needs to now do that, but you're still living the bad side of that. So let's say bossy, right? So we'll use bossy, right? So bossy for most people have a bad connotation. But bossy could also be translated to mean leader.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now, God has called me to be a leader, but now because everybody has called me bossy, I don't like people calling me bossy. So now I'm not going to, now I'm going to kind of step back. I'm going to shy back from actually leading and taking the lead in certain things, because why? I don't want people to think I'm bossy.
Right.
Exactly.
But God has called me to be a leader.
Right.
But then I'm now warring back and forth in my mind about whether or not I should do that, because I don't want people to think that about me. Right?
Right.
And then we get stuck.
Yes, we do.
And here's the sad part where we end up stuck. We get stuck in people's opinions of us.
True.
Yes.
And we like to say, well, I don't care what people think. That's a lie.
I say that.
I mean, come on, let's be honest.
Yeah.
We can say it and we wish it was true,
Yeah.
but we know it's not true. We do care to some degree of what people think of us.
Yeah.
If so, you would maybe just show up and, nothing would match. Maybe you wouldn't have on shoes. Maybe you would decide not to comb your hair.
Yeah.
But you decided to do all those things. Why? Because you may have been taught to be presentable when you leave the house. You don't want anybody to think like, "Oh, Dee, what happened to you?" You don't want people to say those things, right?
Yeah.
So why? You comb your hair because that's the proper thing to do.
Yes,
Right.
it
You
is.
bathe so you don't smell because that's the proper thing to do.
Right.
Yes.
And it's amazing when she said that. You remember the scripture where Jesus asked his disciples, "Who do people say I am?" And I never thought of it this way, because he wanted to challenge the perspective that maybe they might have heard from others about who he really was. People say you are Elijah. So it means that the disciples were exposed to what's not true about who Jesus was. Because people are talking, can it be the same ideas with us? I think sometimes we need to come to a place in our lives and ask myself, Cheryl, who do people say you are? And Jesus did not end up there because he did not want that to be a final thing. And he turned to them and said, who do you say I am? And that's why Peter said, you are the Christ, right? And it shows you a dynamic of that, and Jesus understood that the society, people around us, our family, they always have opinions. If they had opinions about the Son of God, now, if they had opinions about Jesus, come on, who am I?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
I know the Lord lives in. I'm just saying, if they had opinions about God, don't you think they'll have opinions about me or about you?
Sure.
I know you have a thought, communicate.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, let me continue because I didn't want you to lose the thought.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
So here's the thing about opinions will always be there.
Yes.
You are here. They will always be there. Even the most righteous, the most nice, the most kindest person you know, there's somebody that has an opinion about them that is not right.
Exactly.
And opinion is the key word there, right? Opinion is not truth.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Opinion is actually an idea
Yes.
of what people think you are, or who people think you are.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that is not truth.
Yeah.
There's no truth in that.
It says a view or judgment formed about something not necessarily based on fact or knowledge.
Exactly.
Do you know, people can form an opinion about you because you walked in the room looking down. You know what I'm talking about? And the same with, I'll give an example. When Miss Cheryl came today, I saw her, she was quiet. And I went to her, he said, I want to form an opinion about how she was feeling. I went and asked, are you okay? She said, I'm actually tired. When I'm tired, I don't talk a lot. I digest things, I think about things. And now guess what? I have a clear and I have a proper actually perspective because she gave me her perspective of what's happening to her, right? So sometimes opinions are just formed by somebody just having a bad day. Oh, she's so rude. Or your mother went asked you to go get a spoon from the drawer. You took long. You're lazy. Get up from the one. No, you're just so lazy like your daddy.
And you were in the bathroom.
So true. So
You
true.
know?
Yeah.
That's what delayed you.
Right? And when she was saying something, I just wanted to touch on that. But when she was saying something, then I got this idea again that I'm thinking that, you know, because of opinion, we make choices. And some of the choices that we make might be permanent. Right? So we make choices, and you find that I made a choice based on an assumption, a misunderstanding.
Even about yourself.
Even about yourself. Now you make a choice that is permanent. Like Dee was saying, oh, I don't think I'm this way, I need to look this way. And now you change your whole entire life.
I got an example. Think
Please
about
go for
this.
it.
Let's say for most of your life you were called stupid, dumb, slow. You know, you're not good at school. You know, just get a C at least. You know, it's like there were hardly any expectations. Okay? Maybe let's say you were challenged in some subjects or whatever in school. But, you know, you either heard it from your parents, might even heard it from teachers, right? So now there is an opportunity that comes when you're getting ready to graduate for you to go to college, right? So now that this opportunity is before you, what do you think you're going to think? I can't go to college. I can't do that.
That's right.
Even if you don't call yourself stupid or dumb or slow, you are acting on those words as if they're true.
Absolutely.
So then you then make a permanent decision to then not go to school.
That's right.
And say, no, I'm just going to find a job. Or maybe going into the military. And while there's nothing wrong with those things, but what if you were supposed to go to school?
Amen.
What if you were supposed to go to school at that time? Or if you make that decision, if you're 18, then now you're 25 and you're realizing, man, I wish I had gone when I was 18. But everybody told me that I was slow, I was dumb, I was stupid, I can't do this, I can't do that. I don't know how to do this work, you know. Or when you, like for me, I struggle with math, still to this day. I mean, I can count money, that's about it. You know, and then that's sometimes a suspect, you know. I got to count that more than once. You understand what I'm saying? I need to, you know, go through those notes again.
That's a big word for calculators.
Yes, we thank the Lord. Amen. And because I know that's not my strength, I do that. I do it more than once or twice or three times. Literally, I do it more than once. Because I recognize that is a weakness. But I didn't let that weakness keep me from achieving what I needed to achieve. Do you hear what I'm saying? Because with my degree, I still had to take math. I had to take statistics. Man, that was difficult. And I had to still go and stay and get help almost every class. And I barely made it out of that class. I think I might have got a D. Thank God that at least I didn't have to see it again. You know? I graduated though. I got a degree.
Praise God.
Do you hear what I'm saying though? But
Yes,
if I had allow that. Even when I was in high school, I mean, I played sports, but I had a tutor after school between the time the school ended and time for practice. I mean, I did well in school, but I needed to work to do well. It wasn't like I woke up and made A's. It just did. It wasn't. I wasn't that kind of student. I had to read. I had to study. I had to take notes. I had to go get tutors. I had help. But if I had allowed any judgments that were based on those things to keep me from that, then guess what? I would have never gone on and finished the degrees that I finished. Because why? We end up making those permanent choices based on people's judgments. Now think about this. I'm sure right now you're even thinking about some things in your mind of I wish I had.
Exactly.
I wish I would have.
Yes, yes,
Or I wish I had done it earlier.
yes, yes.
Right?
Right.
And a lot of times the reason why it hadn't happened is because of that kind of, some kind of judgment that was made.
That's exactly right.
Right.
Oh, I don't have enough money for this, or I don't have enough whatever for that. Who says? Come on.
You're right.
There can be, God makes ways out of no way,
Yes,
right?
He does. He does.
There's scholarships, there are opportunities. You can, I mean, I had a friend, she literally, she worked it out with the, at Clemson, she worked it out where she made monthly payments for her tuition.
Yeah.
And they worked with her.
Yeah, they will.
She worked a full-time job and had a full-time schedule.
Oh, wow.
And she paid her monthly payments for her tuition and graduated and is doing very well.
Mhm.
Do you hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But we automatically, but I can't.
Yeah.
You make that judgment, but I can't do this and I can't do that because you're judging yourself based on where you come from, how much money you make, how much money your family makes, or you don't understand my background. You don't understand where I came from, right? And it end up turning into excuses of why we don't actually end up excelling in the things that God wants us to excel in.
That's right. That's
Or just because that happened to my grandma, that happened to my mom, so that just means it's going to happen to me. Who says?
true.
It's so amazing that when she says this, I think of a story of a young man that I met several years ago, who at the time I met him, there's a friend of mine in South Africa that is running youth ministry and helping the youth in the community. So I met this young man through that man. And at the time I met, when he introduced me to the young man, he had failed. I want to say 3 times, but it was twice. I just say twice, 2 times, grade 11. Where he got in math, I think less than 30%, if not 20%, it was bad. And that young man, somehow, there was inspiration that God just gave him the inspiration. And he said, you know what, I want to go to university, I want to be good, and he was into sport. Then he got exposed to sport in a university and said, I want to go to university. So he, after he failed the same grade twice, he went back the following year, did the grade, and got some few A's. I think got a B for science and A for mathematics, I don't remember. And he went into matric. He did so, I think he got some distinctions in his matric. Now, if he had spoken to this young man 3 years ago, he's a failure. He might have believed it. But something happened, realized that, you know what, and he was older because he had failed than people that were doing matric. Then he goes to the university, studies sports science, and at the university he went to, he became the top student. Then after he became the top student, he said, you know what, I always wanted to be a doctor. So he then said, okay, I'm going to apply for a scholarship that takes people to Cuba to study medicine. He applied, guess what? He's into a scholarship. He's finishing his medical degree, I think in June, sometime this year. He is the president in Cuba of foreign students. He speaks Spanish fluent. Do you see what I'm talking about? But he had failed. If you look at his record, he had failed. But then he realized the potential that he had and the gift that God has put on the inside of him. And after he went to college for a year, was a top student. He remembered, oh my goodness, I always wanted to become a doctor. Let me apply. And from a family that is poor. But yes, there was a government program. He's in Cuba, he's not paying tuition, he pays nothing. The government took him there. All he has to do is to work for the government for, I don't know, a year or two, and I don't know how many years he's got to work for the government for that. Do you understand what I'm telling you? So, opinions, you can have opinions of yourself, but when you get to a place where you realize that you have been wrong about you, it is never late.
That's just like Jordan. The teachers, he was in special ed up until high school. They told him he wasn't going to come out of special ed. There was no reason for him to be in there. When he got to high school, they said, what are you doing in here? He was just a hard learner, so they figured out his learning technique and they worked with him. He graduated. You know, he didn't get like a certificate. He graduated and got his high school diploma.
That's right.
And then because he didn't let people tell him that he could not. And I see it in him no matter what he wants to do. He prays about it and he's going to do it. He's going to make a way. And he believes and trusts in God. And
No, he's doing it.
yeah. And he's an inspiration to me because he trusts.
That's right. That's good.
And
Miss
Miss
I was
Liz,
gonna ask the young man and then Jordan too, did they get that on their own with God, or did somebody help them to realize that?
I think it was two-sided. He got saved, and there was this young man, a friend of mine that I'm talking about, that is running these youth projects in the community, spoke into him,
Okay.
believed, and God miraculously came and visited me in Pretoria, which is a big city. So I took him to the mall. So people, when they see beyond where they are and see the possibility of where they can be, is great. So praise God for that friend of mine that is running these projects for these kids. He set up computers in his house and showed them how to use a computer and paid internet. And so somebody was there to now speak louder than me what this young man has heard all his life. But if you look around, God always brings those people around us that can speak the contrary of what we heard. But most of the time, the voices that we heard becomes louder than what God is saying. So it takes time just to wait and say, listen, let me listen to something that is different. Because what I've heard all my life has not helped me.
Right.
I need to, even if this voice is faint, I need to give it an ear, listen to it. Because what I've listened to all my life is not well. So again, and I know my wife does this well because she's a teacher, and I think I'm running off on this thing. Think of the opinions that you had of yourself, those thoughts. Like Jesus said to the disciples, who do the people say I am? Ask yourself, the opinions that I've had of myself is what other people have told me, and I believe them. But who am I in God's eyes? What's my name in heaven? You know, some of us, our names in heaven is not like John, Peter, Mary, you know. Heaven can call you a victor. Heaven can call you, I don't know, a conqueror.
Yes.
So you need to find out what heaven is saying about who you are. Even if that voice is faint of what heaven is saying about who you are, you need to give it an ear. Remember when Elijah was hiding in the cave? He thought the Lord would speak in the earthquake and all those loud noises. But he said the Lord then spoke in what? In a small, still voice. So now here's a question. Think of what? Your belief all 11. Some of you thinking, oh, and I don't like this excuse when it comes, because I've got a grandmother that is 92 this year. I've seen a life change in that woman's life when she was 85, because she was I think she was 80. Because she believed certain things in her life, and she just changed. Because my grandmother was the one that be judgmental about stuff. And one time I sat down with her, I said, you know, what you're doing is not scriptural. And I showed her in the scriptures, and I saw her turn around and change at 80. So people that will say, that's why I say, I don't like when people say, oh, I'm too old for this. You're never too old to change.
Never.
As long as you're still living.
As long as you're breathing,
That's right.
as long as you got a breath in your lungs, you're not too old.
And God in your life.
And yep, that's a very important key element to all this.
Yeah. You know, I'm thinking about this topic, and we got some examples from the Word. I'll just go over just one.
Let's leave for next week.
Oh, we'll leave
Then
it for
go
next week.
DBI to open another one.
Okay, so we'll leave it for next week. But know that there are many examples in the Bible where someone saw themselves different from how God saw them. And that is just a reality that we actually have to deal with. How do I see myself versus how does God see me? Am I judging myself improperly? Or am I judging myself according to the Word of God and according to how God wants me to be seen? That I need to actually say, you know what? I want to think about myself the way that God thinks about me. Because you know what? We could actually be delaying ourselves
Absolutely.
from things,
Absolutely.
from blessings,
Yes.
from opportunities.
Yes.
Okay? That we never probably would ever embark on
Right.
because of the judgments that we've made of ourselves. And God actually wants us to go forth and do it. But we say, no, I can't do this, and I can't do that, and I can't do this, and I can't do that. And you know how that saying, if you say you can't do it, then you're probably right. Because you end up now locking yourself in that judgment, right? Remember when we talked about judgment for others, it means that you have sentenced them to that thing. So now, if you make a judgment on yourself, you have sentenced yourself to that thing.
That's
So
right.
now if you call yourself broke, now you are continually saying you're broke. I'm broke, I'm broke, I'm broke. Now guess what? You've now sentenced yourself to broke. Now you wonder why I feel like you got holes in your pocket every time you get money. It's like, man, every time I get money, it's gone by, the next day. Why does it seem like I can't keep anything? Why does it seem like this is always breaking? Or why does it seem like money is always going out of my hands? Why does it seem like this and this and this? How are you thinking of yourself?
Exactly.
Are you thinking of yourself as prosperous? And we know prosperous is not just money, but it's a part of it.
Yes, it is.
Do you hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But when you sentence yourself to being that way, then guess what? You end up living like that. You end up thinking that way. You end up thinking broke. Right?
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure if you speak to most millionaires and billionaires, they had to change the way they thought about money, about themselves, about opportunity.
That's true.
And guess what? A lot of them are not even saved.
That's right. You're right.
So how can it work for them?
Yeah.
Then clearly it must be a whole process in the mind that has to shift that is possible for a believer and a non-believer.
Yes.
But what more advantage should we have being a believer?
That's true.
Do you hear what I'm saying? God is the one who gives us favor. God is the one who opens doors.
Amen.
God is the one who blesses us with health,
Yeah.
with long life, with energy, all of those things.
Yeah.
So then why should we live as if we don't have no access to that?
True. Yep.
We have to start asking ourselves some of those hard questions.
Yeah.
If you are unhappy about your life, you need to ask yourself, what can I do to change that?
It's true.
I mean, Ali, we were talking earlier about something that I had been struggling with in my mind, and he said, look, if you're not happy, you can change that. Of course I didn't want to hear it because, I'm like, be quiet,
Yeah.
But it's like, no. Huh?
You needed a hug.
Yeah, I know, I needed a hug.
She needed a hug.
Yeah,
I
but
gave an intellectual hug.
yeah, you did. But it was not a hug that I really wanted. It's one of those hugs that I was like, get off me,
Yeah.
But I needed it. You understand what I'm saying? Because otherwise, how else will I change? How else will I begin to say, you know what, now I'm ready to do something about it?
Yeah.
Because you're right, I can do something about it. I'm complaining about something that I have control over. So why am I complaining? So I think for these next few weeks, it's important for us to just say, you know what, God, if there are any judgments, I guess you can say this is a homework of sorts. If there are any judgments that I have made about myself that are not true, bring them to the forefront and help me to deal with it.
Yes.
Because we got to peel those things off of us.
Yes.
Because it's almost like labels. It's almost like, I wish I had a sticky, to give you guys a visual. It's just like, you know, the words become sticky notes. And you just have sticky notes all over you. Of all of these words and judgments that you've made about yourself. And some of these sticky notes, I know, right? I know, right? Just put them all there. Some of these, they need to go. But this is how we walk around, though, with all of those judgments on us, with those things, and we end up living our lives with that. And then we find that, you know what, God has greater for us. Well, we've been living like this. It's like having a Lamborghini and you only drive 55. I mean, really? Think about that. Or a Porsche or whatever fast car you can think about. Okay? So I just want you guys to, that's your homework. So keep that in mind. Okay? So that is what you guys need to think about. And then next week we're going to go more into detail. Okay?